Hey guys, was the moon landing faked? My guest, Bart Sibrel, seems to think so. And boy, does he have some evidence to present to us. Be back in a minute. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust. Turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Hey everybody, how you doing? Happy Thursday. My name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host for the next hour or so, and I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team out of Sacramento, California. We are 45 strong, up and down the state of California. Why? Because California is a huge state. People don't realize how big we actually are over here. The issue with that is that, if you do call us, it may take us a couple days to get to you. Even with people like around the state. Excuse my squeaky chair. I got a new chair, and it still squeaks. Can't win for losing, right? Anyway, it may take us a couple days to get you. California, you not only have the beaches, because people think of us like Hawaii, right? With the surfer girls, the surfer guys, and all that. We do have that. But, okay. I'm just getting in position here. Give me a second. Push my buttons. Okay. Too many buttons in my life. But we also have a lot of farmland. We have mountains. We have deserts. We've got high desert. Because low desert, if you want to say it, lots of rural areas. So it may take us a couple days to get to you. And in the case that it takes us a couple days to get to you, we do have mediums on staff who can phone you and try to gauge what's going on in your residence or business. And if it is paranormal, in most cases, they can simmer this stuff down until we can get out there and do our magic. So don't fret. We'll be out there within a couple of days, okay? Well, you want to find us? Just Google us, California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team. You can find us on Facebook, also all the social media. Even Google us at California Haunts Radio. We'll pop up with that as well. That being said, if you're listening and watching on Facebook tonight, and a lot of you are, please feel free to sign up and follow if you haven't done so already. It's free. It doesn't cost anything to do so. Same thing with YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Same thing with Twitch. Please subscribe if you haven't done. It doesn't cost anything. Facebook, also, if you guys like what you see tonight, as you're watching this, please give me a thumbs up, show me some love, happy face, that kind of thing, because what that does, oh yes, and chat in the chat room, please talk amongst yourselves in the chat room, because what that does is it puts us up in what they call the Facebook, social media FYP computer. What FYP means, well, I don't know what it means, but I can tell you what it does. What it does is it pushes, the more comments and things you leave us like that, it pushes us up higher during the show, and then they end up distributing it out to more people. So we see, the whole thing is share, right? Just like you're sitting at home tonight, maybe you're watching us instead of the State of the Union address, because a lot of people are going to be doing that tonight. I remember that. I forgot tonight was that night. And there's someone in the house you think might be interested in this stuff, bring them on. Say, hey, there's this little show out there that I'd like you to see. Share. We're always trying to build up subscribers at YouTube and followers on Facebook and, of course, followers everywhere else. Starting next Monday, we will also be broadcasting live to TikTok. I'm really excited about that. First night we're going to be doing that, so I'll be addressing TikTokers as well. Anyway, my guest tonight, as we swing into this, I have been a space junkie since I was little. I was too small to understand what was going on back in the 60s. I was born, I'm not going to say when I was born, but I was too small to really grasp or understand what allegedly was going on back in the 60s when we had the moon landing and one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind and all that stuff. But I've over the years, I valued that, being a space junkie. But over the years, as things have progressed and time has progressed, we had the space shuttle and all this going on and this, that, and the other thing. I got to thinking about what we're doing lately. If we've already gone to the moon, and this is how I'm looking at it. Maybe Bart can clear this up for me a little bit. I'm not saying I neither believe or non-believe. I'm just saying that there's been questions that have popped up in my head over the years, in that here we are so many years later, and we're just retesting technology to go to the moon after we've already done that. It doesn't make sense to me. It's like we took a step backwards. And I remember with the space, even thinking with the space shuttle to have a reusable thing, we had already done that with the well, not really, but I mean, we were already, we had already launched the space capsules and been able to bring them back down and then turn around and put another space capsule back up. So essentially, what was, I understand that, that they supposedly use the space shuttles to build the ISS, right? To help put parts out there and the telescopes and all that. But what did we really accomplish? Because right now, we're starting from scratch again with all this stuff. So it doesn't make sense. And I even remember, the thing about the computers on the space shuttles. And I remember I had one of the first standing computers that was out. And I remember, the reports that came out, like in later years, about the technology on those shuttles towards the end of the program supposedly was so old that it was like those first Radio Shack computers they had out. So a lot of question marks there, because it seems like we're redoing things that we have done before, assuming we've done. That's if we've done them before. Now, if we haven't done these before, then obviously we're not redoing stuff. We're just getting in there and getting our feet wet again to go, right? Because it seems like we're just starting over with everything. On this moon landing that they just did, the leg broke on the probe when it landed. So let me get Bart on and we can start talking about this stuff, and maybe he can clear some of these questions that I have up. Okay, here we go. Good evening.
Hello, Charlotte. How's life?
Good. How's yours?
Well, not too bad. Pretty good, I'd say.
Let's talk about this a little bit. Let's talk about, 'cause I know you were a space junkie too, growing up.
Yeah, I was a big fan. My father was in the Air Force, and at the time of the alleged moon landing, I was 4 years old, asleep in bed. But I got a publicity package that was given to my father of Apollo 11 prints of them allegedly on the moon, and put them up on my bedroom wall as kind of a cherished gift and really a shrine to this great, mesmerizing accomplishment, allegedly. And I carried them from base to base and location to location, all the way from age 4 to 14, before I even considered that they might have been falsified. And a point you made in the introduction, Charlotte, is valid. There's really 4 incontrovertible arguments that would prove it in a court of law that they did not go to the moon. And again, I went from being the biggest fan to the biggest skeptic, simply because I'm looking for the truth and have to accept facts, even if they're sad, depressing. And right now, the farthest that NASA can send an astronaut into space with 5 decades better technology is only 1,000th the distance to the moon. Now, back when they allegedly went to the moon, all of NASA's computers combined had 1/millionth the capacity of a cell phone. So with 1/millionth the technology of a cell phone, they claim they went 1,000 times farther 50 years ago on the first attempt, ahead of schedule, than they can go today with 5 decades better technology, when they can only send an astronaut 1,000th the distance to the moon. So what this means is they're actually claiming they had 1,000 times greater space traveling technology in 1969 than they do today. Of course, there's never been a time in the entire history of mankind where technology was greater in the past than in the future. It's impossible. And therefore, they didn't go. It's unfortunate that this is really emotional to people. It's a literal God to people. I talked to one college professor at a university. He teaches aerospace, and I showed him all this proof why we didn't go. And he said there's nothing that I could possibly show him that would make him recant the glorious moon landings. And then I said, well, what if on national news, one of the astronauts tearfully confessed that it was fake. He regrets it. He's sorry. Will you please forgive him? And the professor said that he would still think he walked on the moon anyway. You see, they refuse to let go of it. And that's odd. And that's really what prohibits people from seeing the truth. They keep justifying it. there were ground controllers in the command center who said afterwards, in fact, the flight director confirmed it, that they can tell no difference whatsoever between a practice flight and a quote real flight. It's just a bunch of numbers on a screen. They can't tell the difference. So if they can't tell the difference in the heart of command center, whether the mission is real or not, I don't think you can tell as a 5-year-old watching it on television in your living room,
Right.
you know? And then one argument is, well, it involves so many people, you can't keep a secret from that many people. Well, that's like saying what a bank teller knows about fraud in the Wells Fargo Bank and what the CEO knows about the fraud are identical. They're completely different. I mean, we really don't think the CIA is so stupid to tell a person making the glove or the boot or the door handle, hey, we're really not going to the moon. Be sure not to tell anybody. In fact, when the atomic bomb was built, it involved 129,500 people, and only 8 people knew what they were making. So that doesn't fly. Plus, there's only 3 people going up. And then after that, we have to trust that these pictures and video are genuine. There's never been an important event like this that never had independent verification. There wasn't. I mean, World War II, for example, billions of eyewitnesses. This has 3. And we just have to trust the corrupt Nixon administration. So that's the first defense of it must be real, but that's not an excuse. There's only 3 eyewitnesses and people who work there in the heart of it. At the closest to the launch, can't tell the difference between a practice flight and a real one. And then the second argument they say why it must be real is the Russians or Chinese would have squealed on us. Well, that's not true either. For example, Charlotte, let's say I had a picture of a celebrity with a prostitute. Okay, I could upload it to the internet and ruin them, right? Or I could blackmail them year after year after year after year. So I think Russia and China know that they were fake and they're blackmailing us. In fact, I know somebody who works in the command center of the Chinese Space Agency. And he said everybody there knows the moon missions are fake. And get this, they're blackmailing NASA for space technology in exchange for not blowing the whistle on it. And then, of course, Russia must be blackmailing us as well. The other nations, I don't know, that allegedly believe we went to the moon. All I have to say is, I think people are aware, other countries, what happens when you don't cooperate with the United States. Just ask Noriega, Gaddafi, or Hussein what happens when you don't cooperate with the United States of America. And so that excuse doesn't fly. So the first proof we have is you can't have 1,000 times greater space traveling technology in 1969 than today. They can't even orbit the moon. In fact, they said in 2014, by 2018, they're going to have people orbiting the moon. And instead, they're 100% behind schedule. Takes twice as much time. Okay, so Kennedy set the goal in 8 years. We made it in 7.5 with 1960 technology. So they set a goal, a 4-year goal, with 5 decades better technology after we allegedly orbited the moon so many times. It takes twice the time, right? And then they can only send mannequins. So for some reason, you can drive cars and play golf on the moon with 1960s technology. And today, the best you can do with 5 decades better technology is send mannequins to orbit, and you're 100% behind schedule after you already went there all the time. So then the second reason is shadows. I mean, just go to my website. I think it's there by my name, Sibrel.com. And right on the homepage is a 3-minute video where I show shadows and sunlight. Just go out in the parking lot or your yard on a sunny day, 2 trees, 2 telephone poles, 2 people. Your shadows are always parallel. They can't intersect. It's scientifically impossible. However, in the picture from an alleged moon landing, the shadows are intersecting at 90 degrees from objects 5 feet apart. Well, I'm a filmmaker, and I can tell you that's electrical light, which means they're on Earth, which means they faked the moon missions. So there you go. That's the second proof. And then in my film, a funny thing happened on the way to the moon. We uncovered classified footage of them faking being halfway to the moon right in front of your eyes. And I talk about this in great detail in my book, Moon Man, which is at Sibrel.com. It's a book that I read in audio version, or it's in print or Kindle, and it's interactive. we have 17 interactive video links. I'll like write a chapter, have a link, you'll read a chapter, there'll be another link. All these links you can see for free right now at Sibrel.com. And you'll see that this classified footage on the homepage in the film, a funny thing happened on the way to the moon, and those films cost $1 million. I was financed by someone who builds rockets for NASA who knows that they're fake because he thought it was grotesque that they faked it. He believes in space travel, and he says this is, I guess wrong for the federal government to have done it, and he gave me $1 million to prove it. Make a film about it. He wishes to remain anonymous so his stock doesn't go down. So that's the third proof. You can't have greater technology in the past. You have shadows intersecting that cannot be duplicated. It's scientifically impossible, which means it's an electrical light. And thirdly, we have this classified footage of them faking being halfway to the moon right in front of your eyes. I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I'm 3.5 years into this 7-year project. There's a lot of things that didn't add up, like you said at the beginning there, Charlotte. And I'm like, I need more proof. And I got it. I pop in a tape that says, don't show to the public. It's dated 2 days into the flight. All the astronauts are on camera, and they're using a 1-foot model special effect to pretend like it's the Earth floating in space with a third track of audio of the CIA telling them to fake a 4-second radio delay to make it look like they're beyond Earth orbit when they're really in Earth orbit. And then the fourth proof, okay? This is in the book for the very first time, not in the film. We have an eyewitness who was there when they filmed it. This guy named Cyrus Eugene Akers was the chief of security at Cannon Air Force Base in Clovis, New Mexico. Now, every military has its intelligence division. The Marines have it, the Army has it, the Navy has it, and the Air Force has it. And the headquarters of the Special Ops of the United States Air Force is at Cannon Air Force Base. He was the chief of security there. So as the guy is dying, fearing the judgment of God, right? And as best as we can tell, if you confess your sins or renounce them, you're forgiven, right? So he says, first of all, that he killed somebody. His son is there, and he's like, who did you kill? And he said, well, someone I worked with at Cannon Air Force Base in 1968. So the military police come in to investigate so that the person he killed, their family, can have closure. And then they ask him, well, why did you kill him? And he said, well, we both stood beside President Johnson while they filmed Apollo 11, the first moon landing, and they falsified it. They built the fake moon set. We were told if we told anybody, they would kill us. My friend thought it was morally wrong. He was going to tell a reporter, so I killed him to keep it a secret. Now, you don't make that stuff up as you're 9. All this is in my book, Moon Man, at Sibrel.com.
The other thing I want to point out for people too, what they don't realize is how the computers were back then. I remember even in the mid '70s, my mother worked over at AT&T over here, and took us on a tour of the computer rooms, because the computers weren't like they are now, where they're sitting on a table. These computers took up 2 or 3 rooms worth of space. I mean, they were so underpowered, and they were so huge. So it just boggles the mind.
Yeah, it's the only time in the history of the world in which technology was greater in the past and in the future. And another, you could say, indirect proof is that all of the original documentation, the blueprints of the lunar lander in particular, the telemetry as to where the rocket really was, all of the original videotapes, okay? All of it, NASA admits out of their own mouth, they intentionally destroyed it all. Now, in today's dollars, going to the moon cost $200 billion, okay? And they took that investment, and instead of saving that valuable research and documentation, they deliberately destroyed it. Now, if you really spent $200 billion building something, I think you would keep it. But if you perpetrated a fraud and an engineer later could prove the lunar module couldn't provide air conditioning, for 3 days on car batteries against 250 degrees, and you could prove it electrically, then you would destroy it. So the fact that they destroyed everything is proof of the fraud, because if you really went, you would never do that. And if you perpetrated a fraud, that's exactly what you would do, you see? And then in my follow-up film, Astronauts Gone Wild, where I was infamously punched by Buzz Aldrin when I asked him to swear on a Bible to prove that his moon missions were real, and he refused to do it. And he told me later it's because he believed in God, and that's why he didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, isn't
Mm-hmm.
that interesting? Well, in that film, I confront several Apollo astronauts with this classified footage, and in one instance, I showed it to Edgar Mitchell in his home on a TV monitor. He turned beet red. Where did you get this? Literally assaults me from behind on my way out. And in the commotion, we leave a very high quality wireless microphone on him that works for about a half a mile. And then, my camera operator's freaked out. He forgets to hit stop record. So while the camera is in the back seat of the rental car, we're actually recording private conversations of the astronaut and his son in the house with the door closed.
Mm-hmm.
Now I pull out of the driveway and I, finally realize I left my microphone there. I go back to get it, and we get it and go on. The film secretary did transcripts of all these interviews with basically 9 Apollo astronauts, some short, some long. And frantically, 3 months later, after the transcripts are done, she calls me, Bart, do you know what they're talking about in their house before you went back and got your microphone? I'm like, I don't know what. She says they're talking about calling the CIA to have you killed.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, that's funny. She says, no, Bart, they really are. I'm like, yeah, that's funny. She says, Bart, they are. And sure enough,
Wow.
you want to call the CIA and have him whacked. So first of all, why does a civilian Apollo astronaut have the CIA in his Rolodex? And
Mm-hmm.
secondly, if I'm some silly person who thinks the moon landings were shot at Cannon Air Force Base when they really went, why would they care? Why would I be on the CIA hit list? And so that's why the book at Sibrel.com is called Moon Man, the true story of a filmmaker on the CIA hit list, including not only this new information as to where it was filmed, when it was filmed, and a list of 15 government officials who were there by name, some of whom are still alive. I also go into these weird espionage X-Files experiences that I had when I was being literally chased by the CIA after I discovered the tape and was on my way to CNN to broadcast it. And it's a great detail. That chapter is called "The Funny Thing Happened on the Way to CNN," and you can read the book. It's a long story,
Absolutely.
but strange things happened.
Now, you were able to talk to Gus Grissom, right? Or is there a story connected to all this with Gus Grissom?
No, Gus Grissom died when I was 3 years old. I was able to talk to his widow, Betty Grissom.
Okay.
And this is new information that's in the book that was not in the film because she was still alive, and I waited until after she died. I interviewed her for 4 hours. That's a long time. And her husband, Gus Grissom, was going to be the first man to walk on the moon, not Neil Armstrong. He was the most beloved astronaut of the Meteor Corps. And he was a boat rocker. He was a complainer. He was a whistleblower. He was preparing all these reports that he was given to Congress and the Senate, how they were a decade away from going to the moon, not 2 years. And days before he died, in his fury that no one was fixing any of this equipment because they knew they weren't really going. They hadn't told the astronauts yet. She told me he took a lemon the size of a grapefruit out of his backyard. He was a bit of a gardener. And without permission, he took a bunch of reporters up to the top of the rocket and put the lemon on the top of the rocket and said, this thing is a piece of junk. It infuriated people at the Pentagon. And then a few days later, his wife told me this. On January 26, 1967, he came home from work and said, hon, for some strange reason, the CIA is all over the launch pad today inspecting the equipment. Why is the CIA here? The next day, the guy is dead from faulty equipment. You see that? And so not only did our government fake the moon landing at $200 billion expense, everyone, right? Instead of building roads, making good schools and hospitals, then they used that money to pay the salaries of CIA agents to kill Americans who are going to expose their crimes. You see? Whatever happened to the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness when they're taking life away? And not the Constitution, but the Declaration of Independence says when any government becomes destructive of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. You see? They're killing their own people. They're deceiving people. They're embezzling money. And Does anybody care? Does anybody want to put an end to that? I think the moon landing fraud, if it comes out, will so enrage people it will finally bring reform in the federal government.
Now, I have seen photos online of what look like movie sets and the astronauts doing things on these movie sets. Are those the photos that you've seen, or are these new to you to hear about?
Well, those are either, mock pictures
Mm-hmm.
or them on the ground during rehearsals. We don't
Mm-hmm.
have for release at this time any pictures of what was going on at Cannon Air Force Base.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
but we do have more than enough evidence to prove they didn't go, and it's just people's emotional attachment to it. It's
Mm-hmm.
different than who shot JFK or 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
JFK is dead, 9/11, 3,000 people are dead. It's just a matter of changing who did it or why they did it. This is different. This is a positive lie that people wanted. And I come along trying to take candy away from people and give them a plate of manure instead, and they're mad at me
Mm-hmm.
for telling them the truth. I get hate emails, death threats for simply saying I think the government lied on at least one occasion. And the fact that it enrages people is proof that I'm right. There's a quote that says, the likelihood of one individual being right
Mm-hmm.
increases in direct proportion to the intensity to which others are trying to prove him wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And Shakespeare said it shorter, thou dost protest too much. And the fact that I'm pushing their buttons to them foaming at the mouth, I believe proves that I'm right. The same with Buzz Aldrin. If he really walked on the moon, if I really walked on the moon,
Mm-hmm.
and someone said, swear in a Bible, I'd say, sure. You want 5 Bibles? Are you okay? Do you need help? I mean, we really did go. You're kind of delusional there. Why would it be a big deal? You see, a sword with no point causes no injury. So if he really went to the moon and I said he didn't, it's like throwing a feather at them. Why would he be
Mm-hmm.
mad if I threw a feather at them? But the
Mm-hmm.
fact is, he was in front of his entourage, in front of other cameras, and I was exposing his corruption in front of the world
Mm-hmm.
because it was true. And that's why he got mad. And he got mad because I called him a coward. I called him a liar, thief, and a coward. Liar for obvious reasons. Thief because we paid him $2,000 for a 1-hour interview for something he didn't do. That's stealing the money. And coward because he's afraid to look bad. Seriously, he's afraid to look bad. That's why he won't come forward with the truth. He would rather be known as a famous person, man who walked on the moon, than come clean. And so it's true. Now, of course, I've been a liar, a coward, and a thief myself. However, it's interesting that the last chapter of the book of Revelation, it lists type of people who will not enter heaven. The sexually immoral and the drunkards and this, that, and the other, and even the liars. But the very first one is the cowardly. You see? And we have to face our fears. We have to overcome. And, this whole thing that we went through for the last 3 years, it was all fear. People were frightened or they bought into the fright to such a degree that they took a medicine for an illness they didn't have. You see what I'm saying? That's kind of strange. An illness a medicine that had never been used on humanity before, that was developed in 1 year instead of the normal 10 years. The one of a new technology that technically is a therapeutic, manipulative thing inside of your body, which would be like taking chemotherapy to prevent cancer. Kind of dangerous, don't you think? And yet, why did people do this? For fear of death, fear of dying. And generally, when you do something out of fear, what you fear is going to happen to you. And I think that's happened in that case that I spoke of.
Now, when you started to look into this stuff, how did you even begin? Because, I mean, NASA's obviously got all this stuff hidden away. And so what kind of research did you have to do?
Well, so I'm 14 years old, and I see a guy on TV who worked for NASA for 6 years, who had high security clearance, who said it was fake. Then I go to my shrine wall of the moon landings a few feet away. I'm like, oh, never thought about that. I'm a 14-year-old, open-minded. And then I start noticing the ground in the original pictures is caramel brown. look at the probes from China. The lunar surface is caramel brown. It only looks
Mhm.
gray because of the sunshine on it from far away. So it's actually brown, but the backgrounds were this grayish blue. You can kind of see the fake backgrounds too easily. So they color corrected those, and you look at the pictures now and all the soil, it's gray. So why is it brown in the Chinese probes? I wonder. And so that caught my eye. I started noticing fake backgrounds. Then fast forward another 10 years, by the age of 24, I'm a filmmaker. And a
Mhm.
job of a filmmaker is to make fake scenes look real. And I could tell instantly it was shot with electrical lighting. I could tell you what kind of light. I had them in the closet. That's this particular kind of light. I use it
Mhm.
all the time. This should be dark when it's light, or this should be light when it's dark. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I'm like, this is studio lighting. And then I remember that I was editing one day for the guy whose TV show I saw 10 years earlier as a 14-year-old. Like, who is that guy in your show who said we could go to the moon? He puts me in touch with him, who says, hey, you're a filmmaker, make a film about it. Well, I didn't say yes right away.
Mhm.
So let me think about it. And the more I looked into it, the shadows intersecting, I mean, shadows should be parallel in sunlight. They intersect at 90 degrees. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And then two of the three astronauts never give interviews. And the administrator of NASA suddenly resigned before the first mission. Kind of weird. And the Soviets were 5 times more advanced in space travel than we were. Every milestone in space first, they did, not us. First satellite, first
Mhm.
animal, first man, first woman, first spacewalk, first crew of 3, first of 2 at the same time. For every 10 hours we spent in space, they spent 50 hours. So much more advanced, never went to the moon. And I'm like, something doesn't smell right. You know what I mean? And then
Right.
I start thinking, well, I have this kind of, never give up personality, and I
Mhm.
like puzzles. So I said to myself, if anyone could find out whether they went to the moon or not, it would probably be me. And then I said, well,
Mhm.
if they did not go, and I start overturning these rocks, that could be dangerous.
Mhm.
I want to have a wife and family someday. I'm not going to risk my life for what Nixon did. I turned down the project. And 5 years go by, and I had another client who promised to get one of my scripts to a famous person in Hollywood if I did them a favor. I'm like, well, what favor? They said, well, read the Bible. And I'm like, oh, okay, good trade. So I got this 1 year Bible, divides the Bible into, January 1st, January 2nd. It's like 15 minutes a day. So over
Mhm.
the next 5 years, I read the Bible 5 times. I'm not a Christian by any means, but it did develop in me a knowledge of a spiritual battle between good and evil. I'm sure you're aware of that,
Right.
and light and darkness, truth and lies. And I said, if they did not go to the moon, that's more profound than if they'd actually gone. Do you see that? They
Mhm.
go there, plant a flag, come back, whoop de doo. Or they lie to the whole world, they lie to their people, they embezzle money, the greatest accomplishment of all time, print it on coins, print it on stamps, teach it in every school, give them medals of honor for being such good liars. If that's true, from the great nation on earth, the United States, that's so much more profound. Don't you see that? It's so much more profound, the faking of the moon landing, than if they'd actually gone. And no one knows. It's like a
Mhm.
cure for cancer that's being suppressed. Unless mankind can overcome this, you can have a great awakening about everything else. But if we still think the moon landings are real when they're not, there is no great awakening. And I think it's the linchpin. I showed the footage I uncovered to an NBC news director. He practically fainted and said, this absolutely proves we didn't go to the moon, but he refused to broadcast it for fear it would cause civil unrest. And I'm like, okay, let me make sure I get this right. You're afraid to show the public how corrupt the federal government is because
Mhm.
if they find out, they will bring down the corrupt federal government. Isn't that what's supposed to happen? And so I think people don't realize this is the key. This is the key or the linchpin to
Mhm.
bringing down the corrupt system, to enrage the people by showing them they faked the moon landing. That will
Mhm.
enrage people. Who shot JFK is just swapping hats. You see what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
Right.
This is different. This is taking away that candy and showing them for the manure that it is. All that wasted money, all that lying for no reason. And
Mhm.
it's not just a partial lie, it's a complete fabrication. It shows the arrogance of the federal government. Now, there's a quote from a famous female writer, Ellen White. She's talking about the Tower of Babel, which was never finished, by the way, which they built, the Bible says, just to show off. They built it to show off. Our building's taller than yours. Never finished, right? And Jesus says, when you start a building and don't finish, you look like a fool to the world. So that was kind of like a rebuke, right? So this writer said of the Tower of Babel, their monument to their pride became a memorial to their folly. And I think that could happen. The second thing we show, and this is in the beginning of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. You can watch it for free at Sibrel.com. We show the Titanic, which in 1912 was the biggest machine ever built by a human hand. And they had the audacity to put in print, it's the ship that God himself cannot sink. And we know what happened there. Didn't make one voyage. You see that? Tower of Babel never finished. Titanic never made one voyage. And then Tricky Dick Nixon, when he's talking to the astronauts from the White House, allegedly by telephone, because they had an extension cord, he said, knowing that they were not on the moon, he said, putting a man on the moon is the greatest event in the universe, second only to God making it. You see the blasphemy here? Not only is it blasphemous of the government to deceive us, to take our money, and then to use it to kill people who are trying to expose it, it's allegedly the greatest event in human history, the greatest accomplishment, the tallest building, the biggest unsinkable ship, and the greatest thing. You see, there's a spiritual message, the fact that they faked it. I really think, I was reading my Bible today, and there was a note in there that God inspired a person to go to a battle and they won it. I really felt inspired and driven to make this movie, and I was willing to die. I realized after reading the Bible, I'm going to die anyway.
Right.
And it makes sense that there's a judgment, for good people, evil people, and whatever. And I said, I'm going to die anyway. This is worth dying for. This is important. This is wrong what they did, and it's so symbolic. Many more people died in 9/11 than were killed to cover up the moon landing fraud. Even more people who were the witnesses who were killed. They say up to 200 people were killed to cover up JFK, who really did it. This might have killed 20 people, maybe, but it's so different. It's unlike them. It's so brash. And I think it'll cause a change in the world if it's exposed. It would be like having a cold glass of water thrown in your face. You wake up and you realize you've been sleepwalking your whole life, and then you look down and you're 1 foot away from a cliff. There would be dead silence if one of the astronauts confessed. Dead silence, and people would go, "Whoa, they really did." It's not a theory. They faked it. Not at all. They absolutely did.
How accurate, and then we'll talk about this, like the movie for instance, Capricorn 1. I mean, there's a good example of a movie, where they had the set built, they were faking it. How accurate do you think, the people that made Capricorn 1 did their research as far as that goes, or was that just something that came out of the blue?
No, it didn't come out of the blue at all. Bill Casey, the gentleman who I saw on TV as a 14-year-old, who I contacted when I was a 24-year-old, he wrote a book called We Never Went to the Moon from a former NASA contractor, and that's what they based the movie on. Okay. He suspected that they weren't on the rocket. From this footage I uncovered, it looks like they're in genuine zero-gravity footage, so I think they were on the rocket. They just orbited the Earth for 8 days and splashed back down so that they could go up in front of witnesses, come down in front of witnesses, and after that, there's no way of knowing where they are. In that movie, they stayed on the ground, but that's the only part I thought was not accurate. And of course, instead of making it a fake moon landing, too insulting, they made it a fake Mars landing. Everybody knew what they were talking about. Now, here's the thing. Unlike the 25th anniversary of Capricorn 1, which is a great movie, by the way, even disregard the plot, it's an excellent movie, had all the top people in it at the time, the 70s top people. It had Brenda Vaccaro, O.J. Simpson, Telly Savalas, Elliot Gould, Sam Waterston, Hal Holbrook. All the top names were in it. Karen Black and Brenda Vaccaro. everybody wanted to be in it because the Hollywood people saw that it was fake, just like I did as a filmmaker.
Mhm.
The funny thing is, in the DVD director's commentary, the director says, but I think the moon landings are real. See, I don't buy that. I think he's
Mhm.
backtracking. For example, let's say I'm a super big fan of Michael Jackson, and I think it's just blasphemous to suggest he ever molested a child. How dare you, right?
Mhm.
And then I make a movie, which is an obvious parody of a pop star that everyone knows is a parody of Michael Jackson, where he's a
Mhm.
child molester. Would I even make such a movie if I really thought he was innocent? So the
Mhm.
fact that they claim they made this movie believing the moon landings are real, I don't know why anyone would do that. Somebody got to them and told them to backtrack or to take it back or something. I'm not sure what. And the really interesting thing is, and this is all in my book at Sibrel.com that I read in audio, Kindle or print. Elliot Gould's character worked for an NBC affiliate. I worked for an NBC affiliate. He was fired for working on this story. I was fired for working on the moon landing story, even though it's true, right? And get this, in the film, they tampered with his car, accelerator, and brakes. And what happened to me? They tampered with my car, accelerator, and brakes.
Wow.
Their
Wow.
movie ends with the truth coming out. I'm hoping for the same happy ending on my end.
Mhm. Mhm. Now, once you started looking into this, were, were people? I mean, it must have been hard to get information out of people. Did you have to
Well,
show them what you had first before they talked to you, or were you able to kind of weasel it out of them?
well, Astronauts Gone Wild, we catch the astronauts in several incorrect statements. For example, one person says the lunar module as they're landing, it's super quiet.
Mhm.
Another astronaut says it's super loud.
Mhm.
Okay, during their alleged descent, which was done vocally from Earth orbit, so they could have live transmissions and cover up things. There's no sound in the background because there's no engine being fired. They're orbiting the Earth, doing the audio live and for playback. And then, but another guy says it's loud. So which is it? Then most people don't know that there's this huge radiation field surrounding the Earth
Mhm.
that basically protects us from dying of cancer, and really without it there would be no life at all on Earth. It doesn't
Right.
start until 1,000 miles up, but it's 30,000 miles thick. Every manned space mission is generally around 250 miles, which is 750 miles below the beginning of the radiation, which then goes another 30,000 miles. The
Mhm.
only time in human history humans have claimed to have gone through it would be to the moon and back. You'd have to go through it to the moon. And so by faking being halfway to the moon, it proves that they can't even go halfway. And then one of the clips at Moon Man, or in the book at Sibrel.com, is Kelly Smith, their own engineer, saying the technology to go through the dangerous radiation and survive has yet to be invented. You see? So we have all of these contradictions of NASA, and we have the strange behavior of the astronauts, and really more than enough proof if people have an open mind. 75% of Americans know that Oswald did not kill Kennedy.
Mhm.
50% believe the engineers, 3,000 of them who signed a petition saying it's mechanically impossible for a skyscraper to collapse from a pinhole airplane going in and out, which it is.
Mhm.
I mean, just look at Oklahoma City bombing. Half the building was blown away. The thing still stood. So I don't think a
Mhm.
pinhole going through a grid is going to cause a collapse, right?
Mhm.
So 50% doubt that. And yet what is done about it? 75% say open the books. And they passed this unbelievably stupid law. The stupidity is right there in the wording. It says, see, after the film, what was it? Oliver Stone made, what was that called? JFK.
Mhm.
Just because of that movie, they decided to pass a law that says we will release the Kennedy assassination documents in 2017, and then the wording says unless the president at that time decides not to.
Mhm.
I mean, that's like saying, Charlotte, I promise not to slap you unless I change my mind. Not much of a promise, is it? And so, the public, is it they're watching too much TV, which they spend more time watching TV than at work. So how many hours are left over with sleep and spending time with your family? There's no time left over to change the world. And so that's what they want. They want us to sleep, complacent. And what can you do? I don't know. Save yourself from this corrupt generation.
Is it hard to get the information? I mean, obviously there's a lot of research that goes into what you've done. Is it hard? Because, anytime we have seen, the general public has seen anything coming out of NASA or the government, it's always got those big black, redacted things on there, to where you can't see around there. How were you able to, read all this stuff?
Yeah, I wandered off on your question, which was how was finding the information hard or difficult? Well, a little bit of both. The pictures speak a lot about the lies. Betty Grissom was willing to talk to me as long as I didn't put it in the movie at this time,
Right.
and therefore it's in the book. Other people just slammed the doors. I called up a couple of the guilty people who were on the list there at Cannon Air Force Base who were still alive, and got some strange answers from there. I guess you just have to dig. It seems to be an extreme of one or the other. Because I suspected they may have faked it, what I did was I told NASA I'm making a documentary about the moon landings, which is true. They just assumed it was to support, the lie. So I said, I'm thorough. I want every piece of video and every piece of film, motion picture film, from the first mission, and every still picture of an astronaut on the surface. There's only like maybe 15 pictures of an astronaut on the surface of the moon from the first mission, and 0 of Neil Armstrong. He didn't want his picture taken. Isn't that amazing? There's not a picture of the first man on the moon. Don't you find that a little strange? And only 15 pictures of an astronaut during the Apollo 11 mission, you see? So I figured if they faked it, they're more likely to have made a mistake the first time they faked it. And so when I meticulously went all the reels were the same footage regurgitated over and over and over again, except one reel that Bill Casey believes a whistleblower sent me, and he disguised it by putting a different label on the tape than what was inside. And that's how we found that footage. I guess it just takes persistence and digging. People don't investigate things anymore. There are very few genuine reporters. I was contacted by the Washington Post, who allegedly broke Watergate all those years ago. And it was like the 30th anniversary or something of the alleged moon landing. And so they were doing a story about, isn't it interesting that some people doubt the moon landings? And I said, well, did you watch my movie? Yes. What did you think of that shot of them faking being halfway to the moon? He says, well, I can't explain it. It looks like they didn't go to the moon. I said, okay, well then, instead of doing a story about, isn't it interesting, some people, believe we didn't go, why not do a story about how maybe they really didn't go? I mean, you have video footage there that you say is fake from the mission. He said, if I did that, I'd be fired. And this is what we're stuck with. And I don't know how to get these people off the helm of running us into the ground, or more really into the graveyard, because all our world leaders say they want to lower the population by 94%. So I'm just hoping I'm in the 6%.
Absolutely. So with the new stuff that's going on, and that's, like I said, that's what struck me as odd, was that if NASA has all this knowledge supposedly to get to get us to the moon, which they already obviously did years ago, why are they farming all the work out now?
Well, they obviously did not have it years ago. They pretended they had it. They didn't have it. They don't have it today, right? I mean, when they blew up the first atomic bomb in 1945, it was like the height of technology. That was the pinnacle of technology, was the atomic bomb, okay? 10 years later, they're 1,000 times more explosive in just 10 years, 1,000 times. So we really should be able to travel 1,000 times further into space when we're only able to travel 1,000th as far. You see, that's like saying the Wright brothers, flew a plane up in the air for a few seconds and landed, and 50 years later, no one can do it. No one, right. Not the Russians, not the Chinese, not even the Americans who claim to do it. So they don't have the technology now. Otherwise, there would be bases on the moon. The South Pole has like 100-mile-per-hour winds, 100 degrees below zero, and there's bases there because it's humanly possible. If it were humanly possible to go to the moon, there would be bases there. We should have been on Mars 10 years later. We would be in another solar system by now. They can't do it. I mean, I don't know how much clearer it can be that you can't have 1,000 times greater technology in 1969 than today. Why do people still believe it? I don't know.
See, and I think about the shuttle program too, and what a waste. I mean, they were able to get people, up to ISS or whatever, and the telescopes. But really, with what they're doing now, I mean, the whole point of the shuttle was that, okay, let's take the astronauts up, drop them off, bring the shuttle back down, get it ready for the next trip. Go pick them up, put the next group in. They're not even doing that because now they're having to bum rides with the Russians just to get our astronauts back to Earth.
Yeah, that's a bit odd. Again, it seems like Russia is the space leader all over again, or maybe they always have been. You know, with all this industrialization, for example, Kennedy said we'll go to the moon in 8 years. They went in 7.5 with 1960s technology. Today, the most industrialized nation on Earth, which is China, with 50 years better technology, says it's going to take 15 to 20 years to put a man on the moon, when it only took 8 with 1960s technology. Isn't that interesting? So another development that came out just in the past couple of months is there was this AI conference in Moscow, just like they have automobile conferences or video equipment conferences. And at these conferences, they always show you the latest and greatest equipment that's often not even for sale and may not ever be for sale. So they let various teams experiment at this AI conference with the latest AI. It's called a neural network. It's multiple AIs hooked up together to form a super brain. And it has a special program that can detect deep fakes. So if you send it a video that's supposedly Biden or Trump, it can tell you in 1 second whether it's real or not. It has never been wrong. So one of the teams who got to play around with it for 3 days fed it pictures from the Chinese probes on the lunar surface, and it ran it through the deep fake program. It said they're real. And then they fed them pictures from the Apollo missions, and all the alarms went off. And it says fake background, fake foreground, fake this, fake that, fake that.
Wow.
You see? And they're really suppressing this story. And then the former Russian space director said the moon missions are fake. AI says that they're fake. You see? I don't know how much longer this can go on. I think the AI is the finger out of the dike. I think it's the beginning of the end with this moon landing fraud.
Do you think now that we are trying to get back on the moon, because of course, what happened with the last probe collapsing down like it did? Do you think it's going to get people's attention more into looking into your book and then looking into these claims like that?
Yeah, I think so. I get a lot of emails from people who say they looked into 9/11, they realized that something wasn't right there, and that opened their mind about the moon landing fraud. For me, it was reversed. By opening my mind about the moon landing fraud, then I was skeptical of 9/11, skeptical about this thing that we've been going through the last 3 years, especially when they don't allow alternate opinions of the government. I mean, that is pure Nazism, pure tyrannical, not freedom of speech, not freedom of the press, not freedom of expression, when any counter view to the government is removed. I mean, people think that's normal. Why aren't people going to jail for that, or at least going to court for that? I mean, you don't think that's normal? You think that's normal to take down opinions that aren't from the federal government? I mean, come on, people. That's what we claim China and North Korea were doing, and they're bad, and we're doing the same thing and worse. I don't understand that. So
it's interesting to watch the progression of what's going on now with what we'll call it the space race. How Elon Musk and he's taking his time. He's taking his time designing these craft. He's taking he's taking those steps to make sure that what he's producing will be able to eventually go. But it's going to take years and years and years of practice makes perfect with this stuff for them to even get to the moon at this point.
yeah, I think what will likely happen is they can't. I don't know that they can keep postponing it any longer. Once the 50-year mark hit, that they couldn't return to the moon after saying 10 times they're going to return to the moon in 5 years. You know, they said that 10 times. Do you realize that? Carter said it. Reagan said it. Bush Sr. said it. Clinton said it. Bush Jr. said it. Obama said it. Trump said it. And no goal is ever kept. For some reason, they can't return to the moon, no matter how hard they try. So at some point, it's going to be obvious, I think. So the only thing that I can think of that they could do to prevent that is some national or international calamity. For example, if a comet hit or asteroid and the power went out on half the world and half the world was starving to death, I don't think people would care anymore about who shot JFK or whether the moon landings are fake or not. They probably have some event like that up their sleeve. And they're just going to postpone it until that event, and then it won't matter anymore.
Now, when you talk about the various presidents, saying this, is it because they're left in the dark as well about the technology?
Some might be left in the dark. Yeah, the president really isn't the highest security clearance. Jimmy Carter found that out. When he became president, he was like, oh boy, I can find out about UFOs now. He had a UFO experience, right? So he calls up CIA director George Bush Sr. I think we should be concerned when a CIA director becomes president. Don't you think?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
And so he calls up and says, I'm the president. Send me everything you got on UFOs. And the CIA director says, I'm not going to do that. So who's has a higher rank there? The president or the CIA director? You see that?
Yeah.
And what is it? Central Intelligence Agency? Intelligence is information. They control the media. There is no free press. There's none, except the internet. And when you try it there, they take down what they don't like. So there's really no free press there either. They claim we're free, but that's not true. They claim we have free elections. We'll just ask Bernie Sanders or Ron Paul if they're free elections. Ron Paul was winning, and they pushed him down to the bottom. And Bernie Sanders won state after state after state, and Clinton got more delegates anyway. I mean, how can that even be legal? But somehow it is. You see? So voting is irrelevant. I don't know what can be done other than divine intervention.
Absolutely. What's next for you?
Well, I hope to produce a feature film. I've written a script, and there's one person in Hollywood, a fairly well-known actor, producer, who wants to star in it and produce it. I hope to put the moon landing fraud behind me, and if I start becoming a feature filmmaker, then I will definitely put it behind me. The book is a good final statement on the matter.
Right.
It was exhaustive. It took me 20 years to write it, 2 years just to edit it. It has so much information in there, multiple video clips. I mean, just go to Sibrel.com, click on the book, and then book reviews. It proves it. And if you're not convinced by that, then you never want to be like that professor who just even if Buzz Aldrin confessed, he would still think Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon anyway. Right. So it's there for the historical record. And hopefully my work will be done and I'll move on to feature filmmaking.
Fantastic. Bart, it's always fun to have you on and informative. I really appreciate you coming on.
Likewise. You take care, Charlotte.
All right. We'll try and get you back on a little further down the line again. It's always fun.
All right. Take care.
All right. Have a good one. Bye. Okay. That was Bart Sibrel. And I stopped to listen to that because to me it makes a lot. Growing up over the years, I've seen weird things. I'm not saying whether or not I believe it, but I do. My chair is sinking. This new chair is making me crazy. See, I'm getting lower and lower with it. But I do like to look at the other sides. I think, being an investigative reporter, I do like to look at both sides of events. Tomorrow night, Nancy Matz has some issue she has to take care of. So we're going to put that show off for the following week. So I'm deciding whether or not to go back into the other studio and we can continue our build of Yoda, because I see a lot of people were interested in that to see how far we get. So maybe I will do that tomorrow evening at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, or I'll read from the book that we're currently reading. So it's kind of like a surprise for you guys to tune in tomorrow. Okay. I'll probably change the title about an hour before the show starts, so you guys got to keep a lookout for that. But that's what we'll be up to tomorrow night. I want to thank Bart again for coming on and talking with me about this subject. I really appreciate it. If you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hated the show, share it with 5 of your enemies, because we are equal opportunity here at California Haunts Radio, and we're always looking for more people to watch the show, right? Also, on a quick note, I will be posting information about Coffee with the Ghost Hunter over at the California Haunts Meetup site. So all you have to do is Google in California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team Meetup, and that information will be over there. A lot of you guys go to Starbucks to meet with people. There used to be a thing I did when I was working as an editor at a newspaper, where we would go out once or twice a week and meet the public at various coffee shops and have a coffee with them and hear their concerns and things like that. And they had questions for us as well. So I thought, one of my producers came up with the idea, and I thought, after thinking about it, I thought, hey, that's a pretty cool idea. So I will be available during these one-on-ones with you guys to answer any questions you guys might have about the paranormal. Maybe you think you might have a haunting or something going on in your house, or an attachment or something. I can be there to answer the questions. And also, there will be times when one of the mediums is with me, and you might have a question that one of the mediums can answer quickly. Or it might be something where you tell me about what's going on in your house or wherever, and I can get the message over to the medium, and we can do it that way. And then next time we meet, I can get you the answer. So I think it'll be a fun thing to do. And I was figuring, like a small charge, because of course, I have to make expenses for the team, buy equipment, and do whatnot, because we're starting to get really active with investigations. We've got four investigations lined up that we're going to be doing. We're going to go out live on some of those, with permission from the client, of course, but we will be going out live on some of those. So, it helps us with expenses for gas and things like that. So I was figuring, I don't do coffee shops, but I'm thinking probably $5-6 you guys spend for coffee. Well, do that. Do that to join me for coffee online here. Okay, there'll be 9 spots open for each coffee with the Ghost Hunter. So there'll be 9 open spots for each one we do. And again, like I said, it all goes into expenses to help pay the bills and keep the lights on, keep the show going, replace the equipment that has to be replaced with the team, because there's a lot of stuff that's old, that has to be replaced. It gets used a lot, so we tend to go through stuff. So if that's something you might be interested in, check it out at about, for those of you on the West Coast, around probably 11 p.m. Pacific tonight, and I'll have all the details up. In fact, you'll get the meetup email on it. But I'm thinking we'll do our first one next Wednesday, and see if you guys want to get involved. It would be, and I want to know what times too, because I'm thinking maybe a morning one, because I used to do morning coffee when I was working, so it was like a 9:30 a.m. thing, or we could do an 8 a.m. thing even. We could even do it earlier. I'm just going to bed then usually anyway. So, we could do it earlier, but we'll figure out a time that suits everybody, for everybody on the East Coast and everybody on the West Coast, and try and get a time that everybody can meet. And like I said, you can ask me anything. It doesn't matter what it is. Anything about the paranormal you want to ask that that you're curious about, feel free to ask me. All right? Okay, so I'll be getting that up tonight for you guys, and we'll see how all that goes. But I really appreciate you guys coming tonight. I know tonight was the State of the Union address, so a lot of people were watching that, and I was really impressed. There's been a couple times that the internet got wonky tonight, but I was thinking it was going to be a nightmare tonight, because like I usually tell you guys, everybody has Xfinity in this neighborhood, so once there's a big event on TV like that, boom, this is what the internet starts to go crazy. So I was real happy with that. But again, tomorrow night, Nancy has something she has to do last minute. So we are going to go ahead and just wing it tomorrow night. So we'll do some more build on Yoda in there, or we will read some more of that really cool book that we started on Sunday. Okay? All right. Well, I'm going to let you guys go, and I'll see you tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, and surprise, surprise on what happens tomorrow night. I'll give you Bart's contact information so you can look up his books and everything, and here we go. His websites are moonmovie.com and Sibrel.com. The book is Man in the Moon? Moon Man. I'm sorry, Moon Man. I'm losing my mind. And the video, a funny thing happened on the way to the moon. And that can be seen free at his website, at Sibrel.com. And you can get the book. Is available either at his website, at Sibrel.com, or at Amazon. Okay, guys, I will see you tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Have a great evening. See ya.